Welcome to the Comics Coffee Metal Podcast, episode 161.
Greetings and welcome to the Comics Coffee Metal Podcast. I'm your host, Don Cardenas, and today I am pleased to welcome back buddy and way overdue return guest and amazing writer, ERIC Palicki. ERIC, thank you for coming back on.
Yeah, Don, thanks so much for having me. It's really great to talk to you again. I mean, we run into each other at cons now and then, but otherwise,
mainly C2E2 because I'm pretty much a homebody, so C2E2 is pretty much the only big con I ever really do. But it's always nice seeing you there. You were on a few years ago talking about Blacksmith, fantastic book. There's a couple volumes out now from Ahoy Comics. I highly recommend everybody go check that out. But today you're here to talk about the re-release of a really awesome book, a book that is I'm sure special to your heart. It's also I think it's the first time you and the artist from Blacksmith worked together.
Yeah, Wendell. That's right. Wendell Cavalcanti and I. That was our first big project together. We had so many hit starts and near misses before that, but Atlantis Wasn't Built for Tourists was our first big project together.
Awesome. And you're coming back with a new Kickstarter for a hardcover edition of the book, and I can't wait. I read it digitally a few years ago. Full disclosure, I tried to reread it again to refresh myself, but I couldn't find my file, and I thought about it too late to bug Eric for a new one. So, but yeah, it was really, really, really awesome. Wendell's art's fantastic. Your writing's fantastic, and I'm glad it's come out in a hardcover because then now I can back that and I can have it on my shelf here, and another fine book for me to enjoy and for me to tell my kids, no, don't read that yet. No, not for you. At least not until you're a little bit older. But before we dive into all of that, the rules of the show, Eric. Comics, Coffee, Metal. What are you digging right now?
Oh, so comics wise, I've been really grooving on a lot of the Kickstarter rewards that I've been getting over the past several months. A little book called EVIE and the HELSINGS. I don't know if you've heard of it or not. It's pretty great. As far as mainstream stuff that I buy at the store month on month, I am really enjoying. It's kind of cyclical, I think, what Image puts out. But right now, I feel like they are setting the bar incredibly high. Books like We're Taking Everyone Down With Us, You'll Do Bad Things, Lost Fantasy, which Lost Fantasy is written by my buddy Kurt Piers, and the colorist on that, Mark Dale, is actually the colorist on Atlantis Wasn't Built for Tourists, which is
Mark's
nice
great. I've worked with Mark before, way back when, before he was smart enough to actually not work with schmucks like me. But Mark's great. So
yeah. As far as coffee, I am a big coffee drinker. I'm very excited. My go-to blend is Hairbender from Stumptown, which Stumptown is a Portland-based roaster, and they've recently started packaging their coffee pre-ground, so I don't have to make a mess in my kitchen once a month when I bring in the bags. So that's fantastic. I'm a black coffee drinker generally. Every once in a while, I'll splurge and have a caffeinated milkshake from one of the
chains.
The chains. But generally speaking, I just brew black coffee at home. Metal wise, I know that as we're recording this, where you're probably watching this a few weeks in the future, but as we're recording this, OZZY passed away just yesterday, which is heartbreaking. I'm no longer much of a metal listener. I used to be really into metal in high school and my early college days, and have since moved on. But I found myself over the last 24 hours, revisiting, OZZY's catalog, especially that, Paranoid is a great Black Sabbath album, front to back, both the song and the whole album, and Blizzard of Oz. Those are the ones I've been grooving on lately.
Nice. I always love it when, people just talk about, the song Paranoid, about oh man, it's such a perfect, great song and all this. And, the story of it literally being written in the studio during the last throws of record, because they're like, we have like 5 minutes left on the album. Like, let's write a song. And they just, boom, did that. And it's just like only a band that was like firing on all cylinders, like, because it kind of like this, it's like a simple song in musical terms, but it's also like such a distillation of Black Sabbath in one thing. And it was just like, one of those like lightning in the bottle type things. And I'm glad, and as as difficult for metalheads and Ozzy fans such as myself is to actually like, oh wow, he's actually passed, and because I've been a fan for like 30 years. God. 30 years, 30-ish years. And I've always enjoyed, like, I've enjoyed the whole realm of things, from early Sabbath stuff. Like I'm a very much a Ozzy Sabbath guy, not a Dio Sabbath guy.
Sure.
Though I've come around a lot, and I respect the Dio Sabbath. There's good stuff there, but to me, if you just say Black Sabbath, I hear Ozzy singing in my head. That's what it is for me. And even like the Randy Rhoads stuff, who, like, I love the songs he did with Randy, and I love the fact that restarted his whole career and led to so many other things. I don't listen to them as much as I would like to, just because in terms of this, like, sonically, like, Randy Rhoads' guitar tone is like a bees farting in a coffee can. Like, I just can't I just can't stand it, which sucks because it's amazing musicianship, and it's just like so usually I'll go for like the live versions or something like that, because it's a lot more easier on my ears for that. But yeah, it's sucks he's gone. But I think there's a silver lining to anything. I think it's he got to go out on such a huge note, like with that concert at Back to the Beginning, and even though he wasn't in the best of health during it, you could tell that was just, that was just as much for the fans as it was for him to do one last time. And
what did I hear? He raised like $180 million for charity.
Yeah, it was like
through that
190
last
for like
concert.
Parkinson's and children's charities. It's just like, I mean, that's inarguably, like, just like, how do you not, like, just immediately, like, love the guy for that alone? He's up, he obviously had like a troubles in his, in his past and all that,
Yes.
but I don't think anyone could ever say that he wasn't just a guy who had his heart on his sleeve, and he just loved making music. And I've been going back myself and listening to, like, I was already going back and listening to stuff because he has some songs that are very near and dear to me. And just going back and listening to some of the stuff is like a lot of the lighter songs he has, like, you just hear how much of like a Beatles fan he was and how much that's like put through that filter of Ozzy the metal guy, but like there's still that Beatles like melody and harmony feel and stuff to a lot of stuff, like even like a lot of the newer stuff as well, because every time he had a new album, there's always like one or two songs I'm like, yes, this is great, this is a jam, this is which for someone who has as much output as he did, like, that's, I think that's pretty rare for not a super diehard person to be like enjoying something at the very least from every album he puts out. But I'm talking all over it. But yeah, yes.
No, that's fine. I mean, it was a huge blow to the music community.
Yeah.
Like I said, I had really kind of separated myself from metal as a genre, but used to be very into it. So this was a cool opportunity,
Mhm.
cool
Yeah.
in quotation marks, to go back and just explore that music again for the first time in 20-25 years.
Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah, it's great that people are going to, I'm sure you're going to be far from the only person to do that. And hopefully more new people come and become fans and keep that legacy going with him, because you can, much like my favorite band of all time, Metallica, like, you can kind of find like any Ozzy song to fit the mood.
Yes.
If you especially if you include the Black Sabbath stuff, like, you could just find anything to fit the right mood. as much as I want to like delve into like what metal did you used to listen to back in the day and all that, I'll refrain. I'll keep some self control with that.
Oh, I want to tell you. I
Um,
want to tell you one story that kind of goes way tangent because you mentioned Metallica.
please
Um,
do then.
I saw Metallica when I think I was 15 years old.
Okay.
Up at it was in Detroit. It was what was then called Pine Knob Amphitheater. It was an outdoor venue.
Sure.
I don't know if that's still what it's called. I've
Mhm.
long since moved away from the Midwest. It was Metallica was the headliner with Danzig and this was like Danzig 3 era. So like
Okay.
Mother had just like popped
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
MTV, and then Suicidal Tendencies.
Oh,
And
nice.
during Danzig's set, the audience decided to rip the sod up off of the hill and start chucking it at at the stage. So it was absolutely like we were poor 15-year-old kids, my best buddy Mike and I. So we had, the cheap seats up on the
Yeah.
hill. But as soon as everyone started ripping up the sod and throwing it towards the stage, the security
Mhm.
guards scattered like cockroaches when the lights come on. So my buddy Mike and I run up, hop the fence, and we ended up like for the rest of the show, we were like 4 rows from the front. It was amazing.
Oh, that's fucking awesome.
So
I am insanely jealous of that. Not so much because of, you know, getting the calls of Ruckus or even being up that close, just because you got to see Metallica with Jason Newsted, and that's my guy. Like that's who got
your
me
guy.
into playing music. And I didn't see Metallica until Trujillo was in the band. I wasn't able to. I had tickets to go see them at the Garage when they had Garage Inc. come out in like '98, and they're doing like club shows. So they're doing like the Aragon in Chicago, which is like what 2,500 people, I think, or something ridiculously small. I had a ticket, but my friend, who was a much bigger Metallica fan at the time, didn't get a ticket. So I sold it to him because I felt bad. Now I'm kind of kicking myself because I'm like, maybe I should have went. But yeah, that you must have saw them. Was that Black Album era or was that
It
Tail End of
was
Justice
it
or in between?
was well
Like,
because I don't
was it
know that
low?
you recall this, but they toured for like 3 years on the Black Album.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
So
so I
that
think
was like,
it was the Black Album, and then the what was the live album that they put out after that? The big
the
giant box set live album.
live shit Binge and Purge.
Yes.
That was nonstop at my house. That's what sold me on all of it. Into the year and a half in the life of Metallica and all that jazz. I could probably quote that movie verbatim at this point. Still.
So as a metal guy who graduated to becoming a punk guy in my later
Mhm.
years, retroactively the highlight of the show was that Danzig came out with Metallica and did as part of one of the encores they did Last Caress, which is
Oh, nice.
a
Nice.
Misfit song.
Yeah.
Not fit for human consumption, but
No.
it's a great song, and it was really cool to see them do that together.
Nice. That's awesome. And you got to see Suicidal Tendencies.
Yeah,
Was Trujillo with them at that time? Or was he an Ozzy at that
that's
point?
I am not sure.
Okay.
That was
'Cause,
30
yeah.
years ago for me.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, you got to see that. Um, before we move on to other stuff, you can also take this time to talk about any actual other music you're enjoying. We filled the metal quota. If there's something else you want to chat about that you're enjoying musically, uh, you know, our ears are open. But if not,
Well, let's talk about some comics.
all right, all right. Let's talk about some comics. Well, first and foremost, you got Atlantis wasn't built for tourists coming to Kickstarter. It's forget my brain fart for the timing, but it'll either be live now as this episode is released, or live very soon. I think this will be already launched.
Yeah, it
Right.
will
So
have launched on it launches on the 12th, so it is probably
yes,
ongoing
yes, yes,
as we are talking.
yes. That's right. That's right.
Uh,
So it's live now. Go to the link in the show notes and go back and then come back here and listen to us talk about it, because it we're going to convince you. So just go and do it now, then come back and listen. So that way you just get it off your plate and it's done.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I'm
We
sure
will
it's already,
be here.
I'm sure it's already funded by now, and just Eric's just sitting on wondering what the hell he's going to do for stretch goals because it's so funded. It better be. No, seriously though, uh, when I read it a few years ago, I'm like, this is just like a really great take on just something this like. Well, you know what? Before I screw up the description of it, Eric, what is Atlantis wasn't built for tourists?
Sure. Atlantis wasn't built for tourists is a neo-Western with Lovecraftian sensibilities. I have always at conventions struggled with how to like make a pithy, X meets Y high concept pitch for this book. Somehow it still sells well in spite of that. But thankfully, thanks to Amazon Prime and Jack Reacher, I now have the perfect one. And it is basically if you dropped Jack Reacher into a Lovecraftian horror story, that's Atlantis Wasn't Built for Tourists. It's the story of a drifter named Lucas Lewis who wanders into a small town in the Pacific Northwest wanting nothing more than a warm bed for the night and maybe a hot meal. What he finds instead is a town that is in thrall to some otherworldly evil. He takes it upon himself to clean up the town, but finds that there are secrets upon secrets, and these monsters may not be what they seem. Unfortunately for the monsters, neither is Lucas.
I am a fan of the Reacher show, and it did not dawn on me until you just said it. Like, holy shit, that is perfect. That is like, and and thank God Reacher came out, because that's like, it's a very popular show, but it's also like it creates such a great shorthand for like
Yes.
just the vibe of just like
Just
the whole book
a
and all that.
drifter,
Yeah.
a stranger comes to town, and all is not as it seems, and
Neither is he.
goopy Lovecraft monsters. It's perfect.
I mean, what more do you want? Like, you have me at
Exactly.
goopy Lovecraft monsters. Like, it's I'm always drawn to that, to the Lovecraftian stuff. Not so much the Alan Moore take on it. It's a little too far for me on some of the things he decides to explore there. But just like the creepiness, the dread, I think, is done really well in this book. Wendell's art's always fantastic, and it's definitely fantastic in this book. You're always so great at constructing, immediately like constructing a world that feels lived in and existing, and like we're not being given exposition. Like it feels like we're just here and we're experiencing, as opposed to being told and all that. And it's great that you can have it back out again, because there was some trouble with, or some hiccups, I guess, with releases and collections, and it not being really widely available at the moment. So I'm glad you're able to like come back, and not only that, but do it in a hardcover, because hardcovers are always really nice.
Yeah,
And
no, it's gonna be really nice. To give people the TLDR is I kickstarted this book initially back in 2019. It was a successful Kickstarter. People seem to love the book. I then pitched it to Scout Comics because I wanted to have my book in comic book stores, like so
Yep.
many creators really do.
Mhm.
Scout, immediately jumped, and they serialized it as 4 issues and put out a trade, and that was great. And subsequently, they have stopped publishing it. I got the rights back at the beginning of this year, and I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to put it back into the world. We've got a really cool cover that was initially done for a limited website only edition by Stephen Russell Black. And so we're pretty excited about that. There's also going to be 8 pages of new material,
Okay.
one prequel story and one epilogue story that will be appearing
Awesome.
inside the book.
Awesome.
never before seen, as well as some unused artwork that Wendell did, some of his earliest sketches of the characters. As you said, Wendell has been my partner on the 2 Blacksmith volumes, so this will be great for people who liked Blacksmith. I do not know why Siri just popped up and started talking talking back to me. Sorry about that. In addition to Wendell, we have Mark Dale on colors, Sean Lee, who is a fantastic letterer and designer, actually won an Eisner Award for his work with Stan Sakai at IDW.
Amazing letterer.
So,
Awesome.
it's a really cool all-star team. I'm just excited to get the book back out there.
I was hoping just for like some of that juicy back matter stuff, because that's my jam with collections and all that. But like getting an epilogue and a prologue, I'm like, ooh, we eating good, folks. We eating good.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to make this an edition that if you bought the Kickstarter back in the 2010s, or if you bought the Scout edition, you would still be getting something new, some bang for your buck in this reprint.
Something besides just different printing with a sturdier cover or anything like that. That's awesome. And it's very awesome of you also to have taken that into account and thought, like, if you're going to do this, make it really worthwhile for everybody. So that's great. I'm looking forward to getting that extra bits of stuff and all that. Since it has been a while since the initial Kickstarter and all that, would you mind kind of going back in the memory ranks and like telling us what kind of inspired you to go in this with the story? Because as it was your first collaboration with Wendell, you mentioned there's you guys had some starts and stops with some stuff and all that. So was this something that you kind of had in mind? Is it something you worked together with him to kind of mold, or how did that kind of process come about with the story?
It was, it was a little of everything. It was, my love of Sergio Leone westerns, Kurosawa samurai movies, neo-noirs like No Country for Old Men, combined with and this is spoilers for people who haven't read it. This book acts as a sort of unofficial sequel to H.P. Lovecraft's Shadow over Innsmouth, which is my favorite of his short stories. The problem with it, which is the problem with all of Lovecraft's work, is that Lovecraft was xenophobic, racist, agoraphobic, had a lot of personal issues. So a lot of that baggage is implicit in the stories. So I kind of wanted to obliquely address that in telling a story in that world. Okay. And I'm not the first person to do that, but I thought it was important to say that, like, this is a person who is very important to 20th century literature. We don't arrive at Alan Moore or Stephen King if there's not an H.P. Lovecraft. Yeah. But also, this guy was a creep. So how can we kind of tell a story that addresses that? At the same time, Wendell, I sent him the script, and he noticed something that I didn't, in that there is a big component to the original First Blood, the first Rambo movie, back before it became a macho action movie. He's like, oh, well, I see a lot of Brian Dennehy's sheriff in the sheriff that you introduce in Atlantis. Oh my God. So, that's where his inspiration came from. And that's what he leaned into when he was drawing the book.
Much like the Reacher thing, the minute you said, I'm like, oh wow, yes. Because I recently, I can't remember if I ever actually watched First Blood, like, ever when I was younger, because we're similar ages, I believe. So 2 and 3 were like the ones always playing everywhere, because those were the action, insane, things that would always be playing on TV or cable or whatever. And the first one wasn't nearly played as much. And having revisited that not that long ago, like I was like, wow, this is a much more measured movie.
Yes, it's a
Like,
very different movie. It's weird. It's, if not for the characters' names, they
yeah,
could have. They're just two completely different universes.
it's like watching Rocky 1 and then watching Rocky 4 right after. It's like, wait a second.
Right.
Oh no, that's a great pull from Wendell on that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, awesome. So you know, in and like you said, like addressing the Lovecraft stuff is it's not, you know, a new thing, but you know, I'm glad you did it because, you know, I think some writers and some creative people in general are just kind of scared of like, well, someone already said this, so what, you know, I don't want to say it again, but you know, you might have a slightly different viewpoint of it, you might a slightly different twist that's still going to produce a good, entertaining, well done story. You're just hung up on this one little aspect of that. Was that was that ever a hurdle for you in trying to like do the story, or you're just like, you know what, I'm not the only person to kind of think about this, but I'm doing it my way, so it doesn't matter.
I think for me, when I write, and this isn't perfect, this isn't always true, is what I mean to say. But I think the when I am sitting down and when I'm in the throes of writing a script, I think that I am the greatest writer that has ever put words on the page ever. You know, no one can touch me. I'm, you know, Alan Moore crossed with Ernest Hemingway. You know, Shakespeare's got nothing on me. Then as soon as I'm done with that project, then that's when the pendulum starts to swing real hard in the other direction. And
Yeah.
by the time anything sees print, I am just a worthless piece of crap who has no business in front of a word processor. What was I even thinking?
Yeah.
And I know that both of those extremes are not true, but
Mhm.
it's definitely true that once once the product is out in the world, that's when I start to pick at the flaws. And the way that I've just solved that is, you know, I just go with it. Is like I
Mhm.
think that it's important to be fearless when you're writing, which is how I approach
Mhm.
this story, which is how I approach everything. Is,
Yeah.
you know, not everything that I've done is, you know, a home run, or, you know, even going to get me on base. But I'd like to think that, you know, on balance, my work is pretty good.
Well,
Does that
you
answer your
know,
question, or did I just like take that in
no,
a
no,
completely different?
um, I probably wasn't direct answer to the question, but that question is unimportant because you brought up a much better and much more, I think, prevalent thought and notion and line of thinking that all creatives go through, and it's important. Like I totally am with you when it's like, you know, sometimes if I'm drawing something, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm fucking cooking, man. And then
Mm-hmm.
like I go and I post it or whatever, and I look at it and it looks like a fucking Picasso, like the eyes over here, and I'm like, what was I thinking? Like I'm the worst. But then, you know, you come back to it later and you're like, oh no, it's fine. It was fine. Everything's fine, you know? And, you know, for myself personally, like, you know, I'm someone who has to learn by doing. So like just sitting and filling sketchbook after sketchbook after sketchbook of stuff, um, I think I would rather run a cheese grater over my face. It's like I have to like fail visibly, very visibly fail at something to push myself to be better. So uh, you know, kind of like learning and accepting that and taking that in stride, and but also like you said, like, you know, when you're doing it though, you got to have that belief in yourself that like, you're doing the right, you're doing, because you know, if you're doing anything creatively the whole time and you're thinking like, man, I suck so bad, because I've definitely had plenty of times where that's the feeling, and the stuff I do, not so great because I'm just in too much in my head about it, you know. It's one thing to like gas yourself up and to believe in yourself, it's another thing to be smelling your own farts, you know what I mean? So it's like, there's a dichotomy there. You can think you're top tier while you're doing it. It's as long as you don't carry that attitude afterwards,
Yeah,
because
right. You don't want to be a jerk in real life. And again,
yeah,
those are both of those extremes are
extremes that are
private
not true.
emotions for
Yeah,
me, right? Like I
yeah,
definitely.
and, yeah. And I appreciate you sharing them, because I feel like that's something that people need to like kind of like instill in themselves a little bit. Not that everybody has to have those two extremes, but I totally sympathize with both of those. And I feel like if you can find your top level of like self love in what you do,
Yes.
and then find and then manage your bottom rung of like critical thinking or critical against yourself. That I think that's key, and that's definitely something. Even like now, I'm you know in my early 40s, and I'm like, I still struggle to not just like shit on myself when I'm posting something online. And this isn't so great. Oh, this sucks. Sorry, this isn't so great. Whatever. It's like, no, just shut up. No one cares. No one wants to hear you shitting on yourself. That's the thing. If there's
Right.
anything I know, at least in the circles I'm involved in, and the community I've been blessed with being able to be around, no one wants to hear you talk shit about yourself. Everyone is there to see you succeed, because we all love
Yes.
comics. And that's one of the, I think, the best things about the independent comic industry at this point, is that and we're kind of talking about it before we start recording, like most of my comics reading, vast majority, is all Kickstarter stuff, because it's all independent stuff, and it's all people I know or kind of know, or just kind of know through online. I don't really have any type of actual relationship in friendly or otherwise with them. And I just want to read good comics, and I last thing I want to see is someone uh telling everybody, oh, I know I'm not great or whatever. It's like, no, you don't have to do that. There's enough of that shit going around. No,
Yeah.
there's enough trolls, there's enough just people who hate on independent comics just for the fact they're not Spider-Man or whatever, that you don't need to do that, because there's so many great books out there that you know people are missing out on if they're not just opening up their eyes a little bit. Stuff like Atlantis wasn't built for us. Stuff like Blacksmith, And I know you've had some publisher work and stuff here at that. You had a real fun series last time we spoke. Why is his name escaping me? Kaiden, was it?
Ninja Kaiden, yeah.
Ninja
Yeah,
Kaiden.
that was a fun book, right?
Yeah,
That
that was
was
that was a real fun book, and I always love seeing, you know, people I know who have done such great, rich, independent work on these other things, because to me it seems like, it feels like, even though it might be someone else's character or something, there feels like there's a lot more richness that they're bringing in with what they're doing, not just someone who's like, I want to, not that there's anything wrong with that, not that there's any great stories of people who think this way, but like, I just want to write Spider-Man, so I'm only going to be going after writing Spider-Man, So I don't know what the fuck I'm going on with this whole tangent.
well, I think
But like,
to like kind of
comics
pull
are
it back to
cool.
what
Yeah. Yeah.
to kind
Comics
of
are
pull it back
cool.
to
Don't
what you
shit
were
on
saying.
yourselves. Yeah.
Is I think there's a middle path to be. You don't want to be arrogant.
Yeah.
If you tell me that the book that you're trying to sell me is the best thing that's ever been published, I don't believe you. If you tell me it's crap, I don't believe you. But if you tell
Yeah.
me this is the best that I could do with the talent I had at the time that I was making it, then that's a book I want to read.
Yes.
Right? Because that
Yes.
comes from, an emotionally honest place. That's an emotionally honest assessment of the work
Mhm.
you're putting in front of me.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I've had many of people pitch to me, their book, and it's like, when someone's like, when they're just, and I've mentioned this on the show before, like, I am just a fan of listening and watching and reading things about and from people who are just passionate about what they do, because that just transcends what my interests are. I bring this up a few times, but like, there's this movie many years ago called Jiro Dreams of Sushi. I don't eat sushi. I could care less about sushi. But the fact that there's such passion behind what they do and the importance of it, and all that, like, I was enthralled throughout the whole movie. Like, I'm like, oh wow, this is intense. And I've had that experience with other comics and stuff like that. Like you said, I don't want to hear someone say this is the best comic in the world. But if someone's like, I had to tell this story, this, where I had so much fun working with my friends. We've made this book. We're really proud of it. Like that's, to me, that's the biggest endorsement you could ever have. It's like, with that. And there's plenty of books that I've read even recently that, were just people who are like, what, I had to make this. I had to make this. And, maybe that's just because it speaks to me as a creator. And I'm sure, you feel the same way. It's like, we do this because we have to. there's yeah, we made the choice to make them, but like, there really wasn't a choice. This is what we had to do.
I mean, as we're recording, San Diego Comic-Con is happening, and neither of us is obviously crazy enough to be there. But one of the rumors is that Marvel is going to announce that they are printing John Byrne's Elsewhen. And for those that don't know, after John Byrne left the X-Men because he and Chris Claremont just didn't get along, John Byrne wrote and drew an additional 30 issues of the X-Men in the way that he would have continued the story. So it's essentially 30 issues of fan fiction about the X-Men that John Byrne, who is, one of the all-time greats, wrote and drew just for fun, never expecting anyone to see it. But it was a story that he had to tell. It was a story he wanted to tell. And it's great that they're going to, that they're likely going to finally reach an agreement and Marvel's going to publish it. But it's kind of cool to know that existed, even if we never got to see it.
Yeah. Because, it's, whatever someone's opinions in general might be on John Byrne, like, it's nice to hear someone of that, like, legendary stature within the industry and who had influenced so many is still like, I gotta make this. If nothing happens, whatever, I still gotta make it. And even like, was it I forget when they did that, but like when he was doing those Star Trek Fumetti comics,
right, exactly, it's the same
just
thing,
like,
right? Like
it's just like, it's just that drive where it's just like, I gotta do this. This is how I'm gonna do it to get it done.
Yeah, and I mean, Kickstarter, broadly speaking, has been phenomenal for that, because it becomes this kind of crucible where you can put something that might not have enough pull in the mainstream to get a Image or a Marvel or a DC on board, but you can still put it out into the world and you can find out if it does have legs. And sometimes there are really surprising things that turn up.
Yeah. We've been incredibly lucky with EVIE and the Helsings and Kickstarter. It's, we're not doing big, gigantic numbers, but we have enough consistent support to where, like, all right, this is worthwhile to keep doing, which is great, because this is a book Steve and I wanted, this is a, he and I kind of talk like, this is kind of like, our Hellboy, like, we're just going to keep doing this until we're done, Right. So, and that's only possible because of Kickstarter, because while we can consider ourselves successful in that manner, like, if it were to be compared against actual, like, direct market numbers or whatever, it would be nothing. It'd be a drop, but that's the great thing about Kickstarter. It's like, we're able to make this book that we had to make, that enough people have consistently said, yeah, please make more. We like this, give it to us. We're back again, so as of speaking now, I have EVIE and the Helsings hardcover on Kickstarter right now as well. We've been, but at this point, we've probably been live for a few weeks, so hopefully we're well funded and all that, and there's enough space for everybody on Kickstarter as well for all that.
Absolutely. There's
so
and
not
I mean,
to turn not
I'm
to switch us to promo for that
hardcover on my shelf, because it's you and Steve, who I've been fans of for years. It's it really tugs at a lot of my big influences and things that I really enjoy. Buffy was a foundational for me. Like it really
Yeah.
completely changed my approach to how I wanted to tell stories.
Yeah.
And, EVIE really hits that same nerve. It is.
I'm glad to hear that, because Buffy wasn't a thing for me. Like, for the longest time, like when someone said Buffy, like I still thought of like the Christy Swanson movie from the early 90s, not, the series and all that, even though I knew of that, but that's just where my brain automatically went to. I just think of Paul Rubens and his like, death scene or whatever
Yes.
movie. That, that's where my mind goes. But, that was a big thing for Steve. And I think through the development of the book for us, like, Steve and I are very kind of sappy guys. We love delving into like, the emotions of the characters and all that almost. So I think Steve initially envisioned the book to be much funnier than it is comedy wise. And I just was just like, well, bringing like a lot of sincerity to it. So I was worried that I kind of washed off too much of the influence of that, because I, I'm not the type of person who's like, oh, you're getting the Buffy vibes from this. Like, oh, we failed. We didn't mask it well enough. It's like, no, that was, that's intentional. We want you to be like, oh, this is kind of like, it's not the same thing at all, but it's like, we want you to have that vibes, because people usually have good feelings on that show. So it's like, why would we want to like have that association with that as well? So I'm glad that comes through still in the book and all that, because I know that was important to Steve for that.
Right. And it's not like, and please, like, I hope that I didn't offend, because I
No,
don't mean to
not at
say
all.
it's like
No.
a secret season of Buffy or anything. But
No,
it's
no,
just,
no.
as somebody who loves the Dresden Files, Supernatural, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and Angel, like that is a book that scratches that very particular itch for me. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that you guys are putting that out, even if that is not necessarily your specific intent. It sounds like maybe it was Steve's a little bit.
I really had no like direct intent. Like I wasn't trying to change anything. I tell, anyone I'm working on for, any like bigger issue projects or anything like that, like I'm just like, listen, I might come out with you a bunch of ideas. Don't take offense. I'm not trying to write the book for you. I just have these ideas that come to my mind and I want to get them out. And if they help, great. If they don't, you never have to speak of them. It's fine. And I lucked out, 'cause I've known Steve for shit, like 17 years now. Holy shit. Is it 17 years? No. 2009, 2000.
That's 17.
Never mind.
16 years, 17 years.
So
16
and
years.
while we weren't like best of friends from the get-go, like he's literally like the first creator I had like a long conversation with at a convention, which who better to have one than Steve, who's like the most welcoming type of person you could ever meet at a show. And we finally got to work together and all that. So as we've become friends over the years, so yeah, I definitely didn't. I was not offended at all. Like,
okay.
I don't hear enough. To be honest, I don't hear enough about my work or the books or anything like that to even like be bothered if someone does say something like that, good or bad. I'm just like, oh, I'm glad you read it. I'm glad. Oh, you didn't like it. I'm sorry it wasn't for you. That's or whatever. So no offense at all taken. But again, especially since I know that vibe was important to Steve, so I'm glad we kept it. And I'm glad you like the supernatural vibe, because there's a lot more coming. There's a lot more coming that will hopefully scratch that itch for you and other folks. But enough about my book, because
no, that's fine. And something I wanted to talk about is that I really love that you and Steve have that collaborative relationship. Wendell is great, but I kind of have to poke him when it comes to what would you like to draw. What would you like to see in this story? What would you not like to draw? Do you want me to put like horses on bicycles in this book just to make your life a living hell? I can do that. That kind of.
No, for sure. And it's And, I think, there's definitely, as I've known other artists, I'm sure if you've met other creators, like we all have our ways of doing things. And I'm sure if I was collaborating with anybody else, they might feel like I'm being too pushy, or I'm being too involved with the writing process, or and, again, thankfully I've been super lucky that, 90% of the people I've worked with have been like super open and amenable, and like whenever, even if it's just like a small tiny thing, and have also been the same way with me, like, hey, could you, if I send layouts, hey, could you do it this way, could you do it this way? And it's never like, I don't, it's never like in a pushy way. It's just like we both know we're trying to get the best comic made, yeah. And Steve and I are very very simpatico on a lot of things. I tend to have the moment that I tend to be like a moments person. Like I have lots of like this big moment here, this big moment here, this small important moment here. And Steve is amazing at like tying it all together. you know and so yeah, I you know but that doesn't necessarily mean like, that's the only way to make the omelet. There's lots of plenty of ways. There's been plenty of times where I get a script and I draw it, and it's like I got no notes, like what am I going to improve on this? And I draw it and it turns out great. Everything's great. It's just, what is the project, what is the book, what is the level of involvement in all that, I guess. Speaks to that. Is there like a certain method to when you write, that you kind of like stick to, not to jarringly jam into like a process question,
let's go.
but like, do you have like a set, like, all right, sitting down, I got, X music playing, or something, white noise in the background, or complete silence like an insane person, or just kidding. Or like, even like, do you have like a ritual, I guess is what I'm getting at, for when you write? Or is it like, I got to do this wherever I can, whenever I can? So
The answer is yes. It's a little of both, right? So I tend to get up in the morning between 5 and 6 a.m. I have a cup of coffee. The thing that I like to do to get my brain going is I like to do all of the New York Times word games. So the crossword puzzle and Wordle and spelling bee and all that stuff.
Strands.
And then I go up to my office. I try to be sitting at my office. I always get dressed, even though when I'm writing, I'm working from home.
Mm-hmm.
I always get dressed because I think it creates that illusion that like I'm going to an office, like I'm going to work, right? I'm not sitting in my pajamas or just, buck naked in my office. There's an illusion of formality there when you get dressed. I try to be seated by about 8, and then I try to write from 8 to 11, so like 3 hours a day. And I'm a pretty fast writer, so I can get, my daily minimum is 3, but I usually hit that in the first hour, so I'll usually try to hit 8 pages a day.
Nice.
And then after 11, I allow myself to come back to things if I want, but it's not like, it's not formalized. But that's when I can like answer emails. I can, go to the grocery store, the post office, or whatever other things I need to do in a given day. Work out a little bit. So
nice. It's something I've kind of noticed fairly recently, well, not even fairly recently, just in the past couple of years, where a lot of like younger creators, like, I feel like they've, not that they shouldn't feel like they could try to do that, but like they kind of fall into if I'm not doing this full time, I'm not really doing it, and when they try to do it full time, and this is anecdotally, but this is also like, people post a lot about themselves online. So I've seen many stories of people telling on themselves about this, not telling on themselves like that's a bad thing, just like this, people have done this, where like they just don't have they've never really worked, steady jobs. So they don't really like have like the training to like discipline themselves, to schedule themselves. it becomes this thing of like, oh, I can do it whenever I want. But then, you know, if I drew whenever I wanted, I'd get no sleep because I always feel like I want to draw like at 11 p.m. at night, but I'm fucking exhausted as well,
Right.
you know? So then I used to over caffeinate myself at around that time and draw until the wee hours, until I, one, became a parent, and two, realized like the work's not any better, you know? Um, and so do you feel like that's kind of like an important thing people should, try to instill themselves in some fashion? Maybe if it's not through like, having previous study work or, I don't know if this is a true, even people who attend art school, if there's like something that some sort of class or something that kind of like instructs you, like you kind of have to schedule yourself. You kind of have to like take this discipline because it's hard for everybody. It's I'm sure, you sound like you have a fairly set like schedule for when you're for when you're writing, but I'm sure it's hard sometimes. You're like, I don't want to do this. I'm tired. I'm a little too, I'm gonna sleep in a little bit today, or like, I got to end early because I'd rather just like get this chore I have to do off my mind because it's impeding with what I'm trying to think about now and all that. But it's just to wrap it around, like, do you feel like, getting some sort of self-discipline, self-scheduling tools, you think that's something that's really important for younger creators to really try to like
I think it's
themselves?
I think it's super important. So, as someone who is, spent a lot of my adult life in a normal 9 to 5 job, they always talk to you about the importance of work-life balance. And I
Yeah.
think that the mistake that some people think is that like, oh, that is only a thing that applies when you don't like your day job.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But just because I love writing comics doesn't mean that I should write comics at the exclusion of all else.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's important to give yourself a schedule, give yourself that time off. Take the weekend. Even if you work a half day on Saturday, take Sunday
Mm-hmm.
off, or vice versa. Whatever you need to do, give yourself a little time to separate from it. Otherwise, you will burn out. There are they're not comics creators per se, but there have been two different pretty high profile comics podcasters that have had heart attacks just this year because of the amount of work they're doing.
Yeah.
And like, you just need to give yourself a break. You need to give yourself some grace. The other part of that is, and I know that you know this too, is that being a comics creator, being an artist or a writer artist, doesn't mean that my 40-hour work week is just 40 hours of me sitting in front of a computer typing, because I am my own manager. I'm my own PR flack. I handle my social medias. I have to respond to all those emails. So like I said, I give myself 3 hours out of an 8-hour, finger quotes work day, to actually write. And I can have that focused amount of time, and I can be very productive, and I can be as productive as anybody. I can write an issue and a half or 2 issues in a week, only writing 3 hours a day. But any more than that, there's diminishing returns, and I need the balance of that time to do all that other stuff, to make sure that I have my receipts in order because quarterly taxes are due or whatever. Those are things that I need to think about as well.
Yeah. No, I agree 1,000%. And, as much as, I've stated before, like this podcast started with me just wanting to talk to my friends more, and it kind of became that plus trying to help spread the word of cool new creators I'm meeting, or getting a chance to speak to creators I've admired for a while. And this is a great platform to me. People say like, hey, come talk to me, and stuff like that. I can't lie that this is also, in the back of my head, like I also kind of see this as marketing for myself, because this is getting my own name out there. This is getting me talking to other people and networking and stuff like that. But, that's like 5% of it. The other 95% is me knowing that I have to speak to other humans besides my wife on a regular basis. Otherwise, me no talk good to people. And also try to get myself out of my own shell, because I was still deal with it. But like, I was a very high anxiety type of person when I started in the comics. Like I mentioned, Steve Bryant was like one of the first people I ever talked to long term. And even then, like up, for years, like I would speak to any creator, it'd just be like flop sweat immediately. I'd stammer. I wouldn't know what the hell I'm doing. And now, I feel like I'm like 90% comfortable with just like coming up to literally anybody and saying, "Hey, hi, I'm done." Like, and just going. And that podcast is part of it. But that's also part of the industry. That's part of work, trying to not be this, I'm not some singular talent where like my work alone will draw masses to me, and I'm fine. And I don't ever necessarily even want that. Like, cause I've gotten so much enjoyment out of doing the show and talking to people and finding new creators, finding new cool books that inspire me to make my stuff better and do all that. And, you touching on the schedule aspect of it, like up until last fall, like my schedule was very chaotic because I have two kids, I have a part-time thing I do at home, and then I was trying to do comics around that. And I fell into the trap of like more time means I get more time done. But like there'd be such diminishing returns for myself. Like I discovered like after a certain point, like there'd be times where like an entire hour's worth of work I did at midnight, I'd have to redo it the next day just because I'm like, I'm not happy with this. This is not good. So why did I even bother doing it? Get that rest. And then when both my kids finally went into full-time school, like that was such a huge difficult thing for me to like wrap my head around. Cause I thought it'd be easy. Like, oh wow, I got like 6 hour stretch where I don't have to be responsible for anybody but myself and I can get work done. That fucked with me too much. It could be my ADHD, it could be all the things, but I think it's also just, I had to restructure my life to like, or my expectations of work to know that, okay, if I'm, I know I'm not going to be drawing for the whole 6 hours, but if if I'm focused during the ones I am drawing, I'm so much more productive elsewhere because there's emails, there's following up on things, there's just gathering information. There's, while I don't fully run the Kickstarters for EVIE and the Helsings, like I am heavily involved with everything. And, and I am also guilty of making work for myself, like writing songs for the book or things like that, where it's like, no one asked me to do that. I just did it to myself, but it's important and it's part of the process. It's part of the book. On top of commissions or trying to run a store or a website or social media for whatever that's worth now, to be honest. Like that's
sure, but
yeah. I like
but
Blue
what
Sky enough, but like it's not
Twitter, there will be a next thing, right?
Yeah.
If not Blue Sky, there will be a next thing.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I mean, I like Blue Sky for what it is. I don't want it to change just because it feels a lot more like Twitter back in the early days where it's like you can just kind of be friendly and that's enough. You can just like have conversations, talk. There's not a huge pressure to try to promote and stuff. And I know some people do it and are successful with it, and some people are doing it and they're not so successful with it, and it's frustrating for them, which sucks. But for me, it's like I'm cool with it being what it is now because and I'm not interested in like trying to do TikTok or even Instagram. Like I that's just all. I just plug guitar videos up there because I could, and it's only I don't even do those just so I remember what I played, even though I never go back to anything anyway. But like you said though, it's important to like have that structure. It's important to like know that the time that the time you have scheduled to work on your comics isn't always going to be the creative part, and trying to shoehorn in more time is not going to give you better results. It's just about managing that and doing all that. Since I know you've had the full-time gigs and all that, like what was there ever a time where you had like what was like the biggest shift for you in terms of like getting a groove and like figuring out how you work best? Was there like a moment where you kind of had like, okay, wait, this is how I do things best? Because, despite what we're all saying, different things work for different people. And
different things work for different people. I just have always known that just through like trial and error, for a long time, what I would do is I'd get up in the morning I'd have my cup of coffee, and then I'd say, like, I'm going to get all of my errands run for the day, right? I'm going to run to the grocery store, post office, bank,
Mhm.
Do all of that so that it's all done and off my plate. And then I can just spend my afternoon writing. And I would do that. I'd get home, 11 o'clock after, going to the grocery store, and it just wouldn't happen for me. And so I was like, okay, well, I need to reverse this process. I need to be seated at my desk by 8 o'clock, and I need to stay there until I either hit 3 pages or I'm satisfied, or it's 11. Sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes, you get waylaid, and you think you get kind of like stuck in your own head, or I get stuck in my own head. And I think about like, man, the second volume of Blacksmith has that one really stupid line of dialogue that if I could go back in time, I'd kick my ass and remind myself that that's not a good line of dialogue. And you have to give yourself just a little bit of grace when that happens, and be like, okay, if it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen. Yeah. But more times than not, if I'm seated by 8 o'clock and I know those 3 pages, I can get those 3 pages done. They're not always good 3 pages, but they're 3 pages.
And that's an important thing I think you just mentioned too, is like, even if they're not your best work, it's important you did them. Because when I finally got a hold of my schedule and I was kind of grooving on things, yeah, there are definitely days where it's like, man, I spent all day on these like 3 panels, and like I just wanted to finish this page today, and like I had to stop myself. I'm like, well, no, if I try to finish this page today, I'm just gonna end up slopping out something, and even like the panels I was working on, I'm like, I'm gonna come back at this tomorrow and be like, you know what, I should change this over here, and as long as you have time to do it, great. But I had to tell myself, like, I have the freedom to do what I want with this book, thankfully, in terms of like when it gets done, but also like it needs to get done. So I have those moments, like you said, that one thing you're like, oh man, I wish I could go fix that right now, but then you're like, it's done. And more often than not, like any of the stuff that I've ever been like, oh God, I can't believe it, no one's going to come up to you like, this I hate the book now because of this, this right. One line,
I want my money back because of this
ruined
this one line of
ruined the whole book for me. If anything, like there's been several occasions where I'm like, oh man, I really wish I could have redone that panel before we went to print, and someone's like, oh man, I love this panel. Or for all that line of dialogue is someone's favorite line in the book, or it just it fits perfectly for them, because we're burdened with like what the intent was of what we tried to present.
To bring this full circle, there is a line in Atlantis Wasn't Built for Tourists where when Lucas first gets into Atlantis County and he's talking to the sheriff, he says something about having spent most of the last month in tents. And 2 words, in tents, like he's been sleeping on the road. And the sheriff mishears him, and there's like this back and forth where they think the word means 2 different things.
Yeah.
And when I saw that in print for the first time, I was like, holy shit, that is the dumbest thing I've ever written. Again, this is like one of those, like the, one end of the pendulum. And yet when the first issue reviews came out, more than one like praised the natural.
I was just
specifically called that out as a very natural piece of dialogue. And I was like, oh, I guess I don't know what I'm talking about.
I was just going to say, you brought that up, and I'm like, that was like exactly what I was talking about in the beginning of the show, where like you have like a naturalness, like to the, I don't know if I said naturalness, but like you have that, like, and that totally came across as one of those like random, this like kind of awkward, like what like, the, like, so yeah. So sorry, you were wrong.
Oh, well, okay.
You were wrong.
That's,
you were right. No,
we are sort of, sometimes creators are burdened. I know lots of people in the world who could use a little bit more self-awareness, but I think creatives are often burdened with too much.
Yeah.
right? We
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
so overly critical of our own
Mhm.
work and the material, you know, the things that we put out,
Mhm.
whether they're things that see print, whether they're things that we are afraid to show anyone else because of our
Mhm.
misguided belief that they're bad. But yeah,
Yeah,
so
that's a perfect example, because you started talking about the line. I'm like, yeah, I remember, like that was funny. Like that was like, like, again, like I'm pretty sure I've had conversations like that where, yeah, you're just misheard, and it's just like, it creates this whole, like, just very uh awkward. But that's life, you know,
yeah.
that's the natural part of it. So again, you were wrong, we were right. Suck it.
You know, it's funny because immediately after that scene, there's another scene where Lucas is talking about like waking up one morning while he's camping out and there's a
Mhm.
scorpion on his chest.
Yeah.
And he's like, he talks about like, the thing that I did is I just was still and left the scorpion alone, and eventually it went on its way. And that was meant to be the theme of the whole friggin' book, right? Like that's
Mhm.
the whole thing, is like, you know, much like
If you do
Rambo in
nothing,
First
yeah.
Blood, like
Yeah.
if you just leave him alone, he's going to go on his way. And no one got that. So
Mm.
again, sometimes
Well,
we do, you know, put our heads squarely up our own asses. So
no, yeah, I've been guilty of that too. The first book I did, Pax of the Low Country, um, which foolishly we did like six. It was really 7 issues, but because the last issue was double size. But like, I was like pulling like panel layout callbacks to the first issue and the last issue and all these other things. I'm thinking I'm being so fucking clever and all that, and like, no one cares. No one cares but you. But that's fine too. Sometimes you got to do a little bit for yourself, you know.
yeah, and
Yeah.
if 1% of your readership gets it,
Yeah.
then that's fine. Because the 99% that don't, it's not going to bother them.
Yeah. So no, that's this is how it goes. But like you said, creators, we're burdened with intent, and
Yes.
you know, that's a great thing sometimes, and sometimes it's, you know, incredibly annoying. but you know, I think the when we hit those highs of like things landing the way we wanted to, or even, you know, something unexpectedly landing when we didn't expect it to,
Yeah.
like, that's just like, oh, maybe I do know what I'm doing, you know.
Right.
You know, I've never really ever thought like, wow, I'm really good at what I do, I'm good at what I do. I more so like, if someone likes something or whatever, I'm like, I'm not terrible. That's pretty cool. I'm glad I'm not terrible at this, you know. And you know, you know that's a vast improvement from my usual line of thinking. So I implore all of the creatives to, like, at least, you know, tell yourselves, you know, you're not terrible. You kind you know what you're doing for the most part.
I mostly know what I'm doing.
I mostly know, and you know what,
And you mostly know what you're doing. You
and
know?
you know what, having worked my fair share of all kinds of jobs and all kinds of places and all kinds of fields, that's pretty much par for the course. Everyone who's like, I kind of know what I'm doing, are usually the most successful. That's what they're doing. Everyone who's 100% sure they know what they're doing, doesn't at all. Um, so anyway, Eric, it's been a blast chatting with you.
Yeah.
Again, it's been too long in between episodes and chats with you about this, so you definitely have to come back on sooner rather than later, because I know you got some really cool stuff cooking up that we can't talk about, that you
Yeah.
didn't tell me about. So, you know, Eric
I
didn't break
certainly
any
didn't tell you
NDAs or
about either
nothing.
of them. So
No, or, you know, I have no idea who, what, when, where, why, what's going on, but I know you, and you always got something awesome cooking in the works, and I can't wait to see what's next. But first and foremost, I can't wait to get some, you know, Atlantis Wasn't Built for Tourists in my grubby hands, so I can just hold it and sniff it and hug it and, you know, take care of it,
yeah.
and
Well,
do all
it'll
the stuff
be
normal people do with books.
it'll be likewise nice to have that big uh Evie and the Helsings hardcover on my shelf
Yeah.
soon. So
You know, the real lucky people are the people who are going to have both, and that's you
yes.
watching this, listening to this, because, you know, I'm sure you already went and checked the link and backed Atlantis and all that. Because if you haven't, you need to do so now. or we will find you. That's a promise.
Yeah, right. It's going to be a whole Jack. You've seen the first
We
season
will
of Jack
send
Reacher? It is-
Jack Reacher to you to make you back. Well, maybe Neagley. We'll send Neagley. You don't want Neagley coming after you.
No.
Jack, you could probably reason with him a little bit. Neagley, no. All right. Anyway, before I go off on another random ass tangent, Eric, thank you so much. Can you let everybody know where they can find you on social media? And the link to Atlantis and all that stuff will be in the show notes below.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Don, for having me. It is always a pleasure to talk to you. Like you said, it has been too long since I've done the show, but always love running into you at C2E2.
Likewise.
But hopefully I can talk to you before then.
Mhm.
If you want to find me on social media, I am at ERIC PALICKI, both on Blue Sky and Instagram.
All right. Super simple, nice and easy. Everyone go check them out. Follow Eric. Check out Atlantis. Check out Blacksmith. That's another just amazing series. And yeah, you will not be disappointed. I'm not just a friend, I'm a fan. So everyone, go check it out. Eric, once again, thank you.
Thank you, Don.